Namaste and Hardika Swagatam Priya Mitrani to this last week of the advanced level course of spoken Sanskrit. We've delved quite a lot into the different aspects of Sanskrit grammar thus far. There are a few things remaining and I sincerely hope that we'll cover enough ground so that you are completely independent with the study of Sanskrit and the spoken aspect of the language especially. Namaste Priya Mitrani, Hardika Swagatam Asmakam Praudha Sanskrita Kakshayaha अस्मिन् अन्तिमे सप्ताहे एतावता अस्माभिः संस्कृत व्याकरणस्य विभिन्न अंशाः दृष्टाः सन्ति। अस्मिन् सप्ताहे वयम् अवशिष्टान् अंशान् किञ्चित् द्रक्ष्यामः। तेन अहम् आशां करोमि यद् युष्माकं संस्कृताध्ययनं संस्कृतसम्भाषणं च सविश्वासं भविष्यति। अस्तु, तर्हि अग्रे पश्यामः। अद्य we're looking at module 8, which will have samasa, the compound words, avyayam, the indeclinables, Anvaya, and then you have the course summary. Lecture 23, which is today's lecture, will be a practice of samasas, the compound words. We've already looked at the compound word or the samasa pada, samasa in the previous lecture, and today we are going to just be able to do a little more practice so that you are familiarized further with the samasas. As always, we'll do a quick revision of the building blocks of a sentence, look into the dimensions of the Sanskrit words, Subantaha, Tingantaha and the Avyayani. We'll do a quick revision of the types of vrittis and an overview of the concept of samasa along with some practice. Ante, we will do some conversation for building vocabulary and application of points learnt, followed by the verses on Yajna, which is another master concept of the Indic civilization, closing with a quote on Yajnaha by Sri Aurobindo. Tari atra etad bhavantaha samyak eva jananti idanim. You are very familiar with this sentence map. Moving on, so what are the ways of forming Subantaha? Important parts to note were the fact that there were these three, the Subantaha or the nouns, the Avyayani or the indeclinables, and the Tingantaha and the verbs. Within that, these were the important terms. The Vishesham was the noun, Visheshanam the adjective, Sarvanama the pronouns, and the Sankhya or the number. So these are the four kinds of nouns you have. The root word can be either independent, Shuddham, or constructed Nirmitam, which has 5 types of word constructions, and then Sanadyanta Dhatu, Tadhita, Ekashesha, Samasa, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. Revision of the types of vrittis. Pancha Vidhaha Santi, Krit Tadhita Sanadyanta Dhatu Bhyashchaikasheshatah Maya Saha Pathantu Astu. Samasadapi Vidwadbhihi Kathitaha Panchavrittayaha Kripaya Yat Yat Vayam Punaha Pashyama Tad Militva Vadamaha iti mama agraha asti. So whatever we've already looked at, please try and say it along with me, because I'll also say it a little fast and that will force you to articulate the words. So the reading will subconsciously happen at my pace, which will be very convenient to get those words in your mouth. That's true. So these are all the 5 kinds of vrittis, and samasa vritti is what we're going to be focusing on. Samasa vrittihi tatra samasanam samasaha anekasya padasya ekapadi bhavanam samasa ityartha. So when many words are brought together into one compound word, that is samasa. Yatha sitayaha patihi sita patih, but sometimes you also find it as sitayaha pati as one word in literature. Next, some important rules to be remembered about samasa. So samasaha subantaha bhavanti natu tingantaha. So normally it's a noun form and not a verb form, with certain exceptions. So you've got khadata modataha or ehi yavam. So few words in that category. Samasaha yugapad dvayoho subantayoho bhavati. So you normally it's a compound word of 2 words and not more generally, but you have certain cases also like Rupavati, Vidushi, Putri. As you can see at the end here, Putri yasya saha Rupavati vidvat putrikaha. So you have certain cases, and other places where you have it is like Harishcha, Harashcha, Gurushcha, Harihara Guravaha. We'll look at this kind of samasa as we go ahead. And then you've got some other rules. Tari parasparanvaitayoho subantayoho samasaha bhavati. So those words have to have a mutual connect. They can't be independently connected to 2 different verbs and then you make a compound word of them. No. Just like Rajnyaha putraha becomes Rajaputraha, you cannot have a word which is bhavati darshanam Rajnyaha, see the king, and then putraha chorasya dhavati, it's a completely different word, and then you say Rajaputraha, tatha na bhavati. Next, you have samase purvatra shruyamanam padam purva padamiti, and this is an important aspect of the samasa to remember, that the first word that you hear is the purva padam, the second word will be the uttara padam, atra yatha uchyate, and Sometimes both of those padams are important, and in that case you have the ubhaya pada that you have to think about. But here you've got samase jate purva padam uttara padam cha pratipadika rupena sthitam bhavati. So this is a very important thing, that when you combine the words, they first form a root word, astu, and then you can add the sup and the vibhakti forms along with it. So that is the important thing to be noted here. Agre gachhama. Vigraha. So what is vigraha? When you're putting words together, it becomes the compound of the samasa. When you're breaking it up and making it into the more elaborate form, that will become the vigraha. Tari atra bhavati vrityarthavabodhakam vakyam vigraha. Okay, so vritti, how has it been formed? So when you elaborate on it, iti. Samasa dehe artham bodhayitum yad vakyam uchyate tad vakyam vigraha iti vyavahriyate. So that's how it is used. Next, yatha vrikshamulam iti samasa becomes vrikshasya moolam iti vigraha. You can have two kinds tatra, as you can see. Dvividha bhavati swapada vigraha, where you have the words in the compound words that are part of the elaborated form as well, like grama gataha is gramam gataha iti. Then you have aswapada vigraha, where when you elaborate on it, you have a word from outside that gets added to it. So for example, you have upakrishnam iti samasaha, tatra krishnasya samipam iti aswapada vigraha. Why? Because atra samipam iti padam na samasa ghatakam padam. It's not there in the samasa. Samasa bhedaha dvividha santi kevala samasa and vishesha samasa iti. So the kevala samasa, basically what they're saying is when there are certain words that are designated as samasa, you will find them as such in literature. Vishesha samasa is when there can be various types of specified samasas that we will be looking at. So kevala samasa udaharanamasti purvam bhutaha bhutapurvaha iti. Vishesha samasa tatra chaturdha pradhanyena, four of them. You've got tatpurushaha, bahuvrihi, dvandvaha and avyayi bhavaha iti. So tatpurushaha chaturdha, four kinds. Each one of them again has different variations. So you've got samanya, which is 7, karmadharayaha 9, dviguhu 3, nai prabhritayaha. So nai is just one, prabhritaya few others that are not necessarily included into this category here. Bahuvrihi, dvidha principally, samanya, which is itself 6 in numbers, and then you've got visheshaha, tatra navadha santi. Dvandvaha, they are dvividha, itaretaraha and samaharaha iti. Punarapi dvividham asti tatra. Avyayi bhavaha prayah trayastrinshadha. So there are many avyayams or avyayani. So there are many indeclinables, and therefore you can understand why you would have about trayastrimshat or 33 varieties, of which the most common prasiddhaha dvadasha santi. Another important aspect that we've looked at briefly is that the samasa arthaha. So where does the meaning of the compound word lie essentially? So it can either be in the purva padam, or it can be in the second word uttara padam, or it can be indicating a third word. So it is anya padam, like in the case of the bahuvrihi. And then sometimes the meaning is there in both words, and then it is the ubhaya padam. Now what is the pradhanyam? So which is the important word in a compound word also needs to be established in order to make full sense of the word. So tatra kriyaya anvito bhavati sorthaha pradhanam ityuchyate. So that which is connected to the verb, that will be your pradhanyam. What do you have? Rajaduto gacchati rajnyaha dutaha iti vigraha. So the dutaha, messenger is going. Whose messenger? King's messenger. But who's going? The dutaha is going. Ataha, the dutaha is the pradhanam padam, important word. Or what is the kind of classification for the samasas? One of the reasons for that particular classification is in the tatpurushaha, you've got the uttara padartha pradhanaha. The second word is the one that is the important one. In bahuvrihi, you've got anya padartha pradhanaha. It is indicating a third word, and that is the important word, and therefore it is bahuvrihi. Dvandvaha ubhaya padartha pradhanaha. Both are important in the dvandvaha. And avyayi bhavaha purva padartha pradhanaha, but as there is a caveat, it is always mentioned prayaha. So absolute nasti, generally eshaha niyamaha chalati. Again, a brief overview of that. I'll not get into all the details, but just elaborating on what we've just seen regarding the pradhanyata of the word. So you've got the importance of the word. So prayaha uttar pradartha pradhanaha tatpurushaha bhavati. So here just one example, karma kushalaha karma kushalam ahvayatu. So that kushalaha, call that person. So that is the important word in this context. and then prayah anya padartha pradhana bahuvrihi. So the example is pitam kshiram yena saha pita kshiraha balah. And because it is indicating balah, which is a masculine word, it acts as an adjective and therefore it will also be the pullinga ekavachanam. Okay, the vibhakti then will also vary. Okay, if it would have been feminine, it would be pitam kshiram yaya sa pita kshira uttamam. Agre gachama. Atra. So we've got praya ubhaya padartha pradhanaha bhavati dvandvaha. Yatha Rama Krishnau pravishatah. Rama Krishna are coming in, it means Rama and Krishna are coming in. Unless the person's name is Rama Krishna. So that is how you know that this is a dvandva and not an individual who's called Rama Krishna. Because if that was the case, they would have said Rama Krishna pravishati. You know, it's one person and the name is Rama Krishna. But here, because it is Rama Krishnau pravishatah, you know that it is a dvandva samasa and where both of the words are important. Next, prayah purva padartha pradhanam avyayi bhavaha bhavati. So, purva padasya arthasya pradhanye avyayi bhavaha yatha upavriksham vrikshasya samipam iti. So, upa is an upasarga. So, you see where all that we've studied in the course comes handy. Karan upasarganam atra upayogaha uttamam bhavati. Tari atra vrikshasya samipam iti vigraha bhavati atah atra upa iti purva padasya samipyarthasya pradhanyam bhavati. I have tried to put in the kind of a comprehensive samasa map here, and we're going to look at each of these separately as we move ahead with some examples. And there is a bit of a color coding. So if your Tatpurusha is Uttarapada Pradhanam, that is what I have left with the color of that particular samasa. Astu. So, but it's not always easy to do it. Ataha kutrachit bhavati, kutrachit na bhavatyapi. So, Tatpurushaha Chaturdhaha Santi Samanyah Karmadharaya Dviguhu Nai Prabhritayah. I'll not possibly read all of this for all of them because it's something that we've already looked at. So, I'll just revise the gist of the idea and then we'll do the exercises. Atra asmakam abhyasaha pradhana asti. I'll just read out the words and I want you to close your eyes and see if you can try and guess the form. Kim bhavati iti. Astu. Prayatam kurma. Prathama Tatpurushaha Ardham Gramasya Ardhagramaha Uttamam. So, Dvitiya Tatpurusha Griham Gataha Griha Gataha. And also notice that Nakhaihi could be plural also. Two things that are important. One is that the Vibhakti drops. Griham Gataha or Griham Gataha becomes Griha Gataha. So, the Vibhakti in all of these drops, and that's why it's a very easy one to use for spoken Sanskrit. Sambhashita Sanskritartham etad bahu upayogaya bhavati karan vibhakti smaranam yadi nasti samasta padam karotu. But samasta padam karana kale anya ekaha vishaya avadharaniyaha asti. That is what will be the final linga of the word. Okay, so when you're condensing the word into a single compound word, the point that you need to pay attention is what happens to the gender of that word. And in places like Tatpurusha and all, because the second Uttarapada Pradhanam, it will take on that linga. Yatha, you've got here for example, Chora Bhayam. Bhayam is a Napunsaka linga, so Chorat Bhayam will become Chora Bhayam. Okay, so these two important aspects, that the Vibhakti drops in the middle and therefore it's very easy to speak. And when you're talking of gender, then you have to know the gender of the second word. Uttarapadasya lingaha jnatavyaha. Idanim atra pashyama. Netre nimilayantu. So close your eyes. Nakhai bhinna, nakha bhinna uttamam. Gavehitam, gohitam. Go to the pratipadikam. Gohitam. Choradbhayam, chorabhayam. Vrikshasya moolam, vrikshamulam. Karye kushalaha, karye kushalaha. Another, how do you know this is a Tatpurusha and which Vibhakti it is? So you have to see the Vibhakti of the first word. That will tell you which Vibhakti Purusha it is. Astu. Abhyasam kurmam. Kind of a comprehensive word samasa map here, and we're going to look at each of these separately as we move ahead with some examples. Astu. But this is in one. Atra yatha vayam pashyama. Vana praptaha will become vanam praptaha. Chora rakshanam will become chorat rakshanam. Astu. Next, pitra samaha will be. Now you have to guess which Vibhakti. So, samaha asti, so it will be tritiya Vibhakti. So, pitra samaha. Astu, that's how you know that is. Bhuta balihi. Now, you've got two things. First one is which vibhakti will it be, second one will it be ekavachanam, dvivachanam or bahuvachanam. So atra it will become bhutebhyah, for the bhutas or for the creatures of creation. For them you've got the balihi or the offering. So bhuta balihi iti arthaha. Bhavatam idanim avasarah asti vaktum vede panditah will become Veda Panditah Uttamam. There was a very valid question as to why is this not a Bahuvrihi. Vede Panditah Yaha Saha Veda Panditah. Kimartham Bahuvrihi Nasti? Because what you're indicating with Veda Pandita is the word Panditah itself. What kind of Panditah? Vede Panditah. And it is the Uttara Pada. You don't need an Anya Pada to define this word. And therefore, this is a Tat Purusha Samasaha. Only thing you have to know whether it is Vede Pandita, Vedasya Pandita. You know, you have to know which Vibhakti will be applied to the word before that. Tad Jnanam Avashyakam Asti. Astu. Karmadharaya is the next kind of Samasaha. What happens here? You've got Samanadhikaranaha Karmadharaya. It's another kind of Tatpurusha, which in the same substratum, when you have both qualities or both things are talked about, then it becomes a Karmadharaya. And as you can see here, the first one is atra Visheshana Purva Padaha, means the adjective is the first word. Guess what will be the second one? Adjective has to be the second word. Visheshana Uttara Padaha, naturally. Then you've got Visheshana Ubhaya Pada. So there's a certain mathematical permutation and combination that is happening here. And you've already got 3. Next, how do you remember? I'm saying how you can remember these forms. Next, you've got Upamana Purva Padaha, simile first one, then simile the second one, Upamana Uttara Pada. Next, Avadharana Purva Padaha. Astu, so you've got Vidya Eva Dhanam, knowledge which is wealth in itself. Then you've got Sambhavana. So Avadharana, that is one way of remembering. Then Sambhavana. So Amraha iti vrikshaha. Okay, so Amra vrikshaha. What will happen to Narikelaha iti vrikshaha? Narikela vrikshaha. Uttamam. So the coconut tree. Next, Madhyama Padalopaha. So Shaka Priha Parthiva. Take out the Priya in the middle, it becomes Shaka Parthivaha. Sanskrita Priyaha Janaha will become Sanskrita Janaha technically. Next, you got Mayura Vyamsakadi implies that there are some words that are designated into this category. Like you have Anyo Deshaha Deshantaram. So that Deshantaram is designated as Mayura Vyamsakadihi iti. Okay. So just as you can see, you can just look at the examples and let's see based on these examples if you can do the exercise. Nilotpalam. Kim bhavishati? So Nilotpalam, first understand the word. Neela, it's an adjective and it is the first word or the second word? It is the first word and therefore it will go like the Visheshana Purva Padaha. Kim bhavati tatra? And I told you that the vibhakti of the second word is important. So Utpalam or a lotus, it's a Napunsakalinga word. So therefore Neelam Utpalam. Neelam Utpalam will become Neelotpalam. How did it become Neelotpalam? Here you've got Neelo Megha. So Neela Megha it becomes. Why is it Neelo? Sandhi Niyamaha Jnatavyaha Santi. Piyushaha Gata Sambhashane Uktavan Asti. Samasa Karana Kale Vibhaktinam Rupani Jnatavyani Santi. Sandhinam Niyamaha Jnatavyaha Santi. Astu. So you need to know all these rules and that will help you do the samasa in a more correct manner. Why did it become Neelo? Because Neelaha Megha Akara. Tari Neelo Megha, but Vibhakti and everything, Sandhi and all drop it because Neela Megha. So here Neelam Utpalam. So very technically the ma will drop and then you got Neela Utpala. You have to do a Sandhi of that. So it becomes Neela Utpala. You have to do the Guna Sandhi there. It becomes Neelotpalam. Uttamam. Asu Spashtam Asti. So Kusuma Komalam. So meaning wise, go by the meaning of it. The meaning is the best way to judge. Kusuma flower, Komalam soft. So soft like it is. So it is Kusuma Miva and it is the Upamana or the simile is given before. So it is which one? Upamana Purva Padaha. Kim bhavishati? Kusumam Iva Komalam. Kusuma Komalam. Uttamam. Next one. Purushaha Singhaha Iva, which will make it, it's saying Upamana Uttarapada. So it is Naraha Vyagraha Iva. So it becomes Nara Vyagraha. So here it will become Purusha Singhaha. Astu. Next, Tapaha eva dhanam. Eva. So where did we see eva? Vidya. Eva dhanam. This is avadharana purva padaha. It becomes vidya dhanam. So tapaha eva dhanam. Why tapo? Because the word is tapas. And there's a sandhi that happens there. Astu. Agre gachama. Spashtam asti na kinchidetat sarvam. Vishesha tatpurush samaseshu nai prabhritayah santi. So what are these nai prabhritayah? So nai samasas na dharmaha adharmaha, na satyam asatyam. Uttamam. Na ashwaha. So you'll get a nashwaha. Mind you, there is a na that comes in because ashwa is a swara varnaha there. So because it's a vowel, you have to put in a na in between. So you've got ku samasa. So there are many words that have the ku idea, which means a negative sense. Ku purushaha, for example. Atra yatha. Kutsitaha. So that ku is a short form for kutsitaha purushaha. So it becomes ku purushaha. Just as you have anashwaha, the na comes in because of the a vowel. You have the kadannam. Okay, the kat comes in the place of the ku because of the vowel that follows it. Tari bhedaha santi kintu jnatavyaha santi ite sarvepi. Puraskritya. Tari atra puraskritya kim bhavati? Puraskaram kritva. So it's a lyap tatra bhavishyati puraskritya. Supurushaha. Atra udaharanam yadasi. Supurushaha represents shobhanaha purushaha. Supurushaha. This is an important one because it gets used quite often. Shobhanaha purushaha. So here we've got some other words. You've got ashuklam, shuklam kritva, shukli kritya gati samasaha. Next, pra adi samasaha. What is it? Pragataha acharya, pracharya. We use this pranshupala. We've got so many of these words that we use, but we don't know where it is necessarily coming from. So atra samasta padam asti iti jnatam shakyate. Atikrantaha devam atidevaha. Next, nishkantaha varanasyaha nirvaranasihi. Uttamam. Upapada samasa. Esha anya eka samasa asti yasya bahu upayoga bhavati. Kumbham karoti iti kumbhakaraha. Chitram karoti iti chitrakaraha. Uttamam. Agre pashyama. Dvigu samasaha. Tari kim vadati? Tadhitarthottara pada samahare cha. Where all is it used? Tadhitartha uttarapada samahare cha. So why are these sutras of Panini so helpful? Because they tell you exactly where these cases are applied. Tari atra yatha tadhita. So you see tadhita uttarapada, that's where it is, and samahara. In these contexts you will use a dviguhu and sankhya purvo dviguhu. When else is it a dviguhu? When there is a number that comes in the beginning. Tari very well defined. Ataha sutra smaranam labhaya bhavati ye kartum shaknuvanti ye kartum icchanti cha tesham krite. Astu atra tari trayanam lokanam samahara triloki. Okay, the collection of three worlds iti. Trayanam bhuvananam samahara tribhuvanam iti bhavati. Astu. So you have the word tribhuvanam. What is important for us to know is that it will be Trayanam bhuvananam samaharaha of three bhuvanas, three worlds. It is the samaharaha. Therefore, okay. Next is the tadhitartha dviguhu shanna matrinam apatyam shan maturaha. Similarly, you've got dvai maturaha. So break it up. It will be dvayoho matroho apatyam. Dvai maturaha. Astu. Next, you've got uttara pada dviguhu. So it says pancha gavaha dhanam yasya saha. Pancha gava dhanaha. Yasya saha, like a bahuvrihi tatra bhavati, but number asiti karanena, it's a mixture of things. So you've got dasha gava dhanaha, break it up, vigraham karotu. Dasha gavaha dhanam yasya saha dasha gava dhanaha. Uttamam. Agre pashyama. Bahuvrihi dvidha bhavati. Tatra yatha samanyaha bahuvrihi samasah punarapi. Whenever you are saying this, you have to, as they've given here, add the word bahuvrihi with it. So it says dvitiyartha bahuvrihi. What is it? Dvitiyartha, tritiyartha, chaturthyartha bahuvrihi. What do these mean here? Tari atra yatha praptam udakam yam saha. You have to look at the vibhakti of the yat there, and that will tell you which kind of bahuvrihi it is. So it is yam saha prapto dakaha gramaha, that village that has got water. So the village with the water got is the praptodakaha gramah iti tatra bhavati. Astu. And what is important here is that the gender of the word will match the gender of the third word it is indicating. Atra pullinga asti ched atrapi pullinga bhavati. Ekavachanam asti ekavachanam. Ya vibhakti asti sa vibhakti ratra bhavati. So whichever vibhakti that word will have, indicated word will have, you will have to assign the same to the samasta padam atra. Okay, so the compound word will get those same things. Next you've got Trityartha bahuvrihi pitam kshiram yena saha. Bala, pita kshiraha bala. If it was a lady, if it was a girl, bala, it would be yaya. Just for an example, yaya sa. Okay, and then it will become kshira, bala. That's just for your information tatra. Next, chaturtyarthe kim bhavati dattaha pashuh yasmai saha datta pashuh rudraha. Panchamyartha bahuvrihi uddhrita jalam yasmat. Udhritam jalam yasmat saha udhrita jalaha kupaha. Well. Shashtyartha pitam ambaram yasya saha pitambaraha harihi iti bhavati. Saptamyartha bahuvrihi bahuni phalani. You see, it becomes a bahuvachanam because you can't, you have to say, you have to talk of it logically as well. Tari bahuni phalani yasmin saha vrikshaha bahuphalaha iti bhavati. Next, adhita kavya. Katham bhavishyati? Adhitam kavyam yaya sa iti. Patita parnaha vrikshaha. What will that happen? Patita parnaha. So is it only one leaf that is falling? No. Logically it will become a bahuvachanam. So patitani parnani yasya saha vrikshaha patita parnaha iti bhavati. Next, gachama pachika bharyaha. Pachika, cook. Bharyaha is the husband here indicating. So the man with a cook wife. With a cook wife is pachika bharya. So that is how it will form. Tari atra bhavishyati pachika bharya yasya saha pachika bharyaha. Pullinge asti. Next, vishale akshini yasya saha kim bhavishyati saha. Tari vishalakshaha iti padam. If it was a lady, vishalakshi iti abhavishyat. Astu, spashtam agre gachama. So you see Vishesha Bahuvri Samasaha, another one here. We've got Vyadhikaranaha. So these you have to memorize a little bit. Chakram Panav Yasya Saha Chakrapanihi. Okay, Chakram Panav, in whose hand there is a chakram. Yasya Saha. Okay, Chakrapanihi. Next, Sankhyottara Padaha. Yatha Bhavati. Vimshatehe Samipe Ye Santi Te Upavimshaha. Alright. So here, although you have an upasarga in the beginning, it will fall into the category of Bahuvrihi Samasaha. Kimartham Karanam, it is indicating another person. Anya Pada Pradhanyam Asti Tatra iti Karanat Bahuvrihi Samasaha Eva Atra Bhavati. Okay, so you've got Upasaptataha Karotu etasya. So it will be Saptatehe Samipe Ye Santite Agre Gachama. Atra Asti Sankhyo Bhayapada. Okay, both of them. Dvauva, Trayova, Dvitraha. Panchava, Shadva, Panchashaha. Atra niyamaha kechid jnatavyaha santi. Kechana niyamaha tatra you have to know some rules. How does it form Panchashaha and not Panchashataha or something else like that? We have to know those rules. Next, Sahapurva Padaha. So when you have the concept of Saha along with, Shishyena Saha Vartate iti Sashishyaha Guruhu. For example, okay, Tarhi Atra Karmana Saha Vartate iti Sa Karmaha. Okay, Evam Bhavishyati. Anantaram asti Vyatihara Lakshanaha. So it says Kesheshu Kesheshu Grihitva Idam Yuddham Pravrittam. Kesha, Keshi indicates this war that happened with the pulling of the hair here and there. Next, Digantarala Lakshanaha. So Digantarala, so the direction that is being indicated, Dakshinasyaha Purvasyaha Disho Yadantaralam, that area in between the south east, will be Dakshina Purva. Nai Bahuvrihi. Remember, Nai Tatra Tatpurusha se Nai Bahuvrihi Kimasti Avidyamanaha Putraha Yasya Saha Aputraha iti. Next, Pra Adi Bahuvrihi Nirgata Kripa Yasmat Saha, from whom all the compassion has left, Nishkripaha. Next, Upamana Purva Pada. So you see, Upamana was there also with the Tatpurusha, but you also have it here. There you had with the Karma Dharaya. Atra Punarapi asti. Upamana Purva Padaha Bahuvrihi. That's why Piyush was also mentioning you have to say the Bahuvrihi, because Upamana Purva Pada can also be the Karma Dharaya. Astu. So Atra Bahuvrihi Vaktavya asti. Gajananam Iva Ananam Yasya Saha Gajananah Asmakam Ganeshaha Asti Tatra. Next, अत्र एक अभ्यासः अस्ति कण्ठे कालः कस्य कण्ठे कालः अस्ति शिवस्य तर्हि कण्ठे कालः यस्य सः कण्ठकालः इति भवति द्वन्द्वः अत्र द्विविधः अस्ति इतरेतरः यथा द्विपदद्वन्द्वः रामश्च कृष्णश्च ओन्ली टू ऑफ देम रामकृष्णौ नेक्स्ट बहुपदद्वन्द्वः हरिश्च हरश्च गुरुश्च हरिहर गौरावः बहुवचने भवति इति अन्ते नेक्स्ट ग्रीष्म वसन्तौ विल बिकम ग्रीष्मश्च वसन्तश्च उत्तमम् माता च पिता च माता पितरौ you remember ekashesha vritti madhye we had pitarau, just the word pitarau was indicating mata cha pita cha, but it was a ekashesha vritti independent. When it is a dvandva samasa, the word mata and pita both have to figure there in that word, then it is swapada samasa. Next, Rama Lakshmana Bharataha will become Rama Lakshmana Bharataha. Uttamam. Ghatascha Patascha Anayoho Samaharaha will be part of the Samaharaha of Dvandva Samasa. Tatra bhavati Sanjna cha Paribhasha cha Anayoho Samaharaha Sanjna Paribhasham. When you have this Paribhasham, it is no longer a Napunsakalinga word. It is an Avyaya Padam. It is an indeclinable. Tari atra bhavati Ghatascha Patascha Anayoho Samahara Ghatapatam. Uttamam. Next, Nitya Samaharaha Pani cha Padau cha Pani. Two hands and two legs is always connected. Cha Etesham Samahara Pani Padam. Tari Pani Padam Prakshalya Agachatu means wash your hands and feet and come. Astu. Tari you have here Ahinakulam. So what does that become? Ahishcha Nakulascha Anayoho Samahara will be Ahinakulam. Uttamam. Avyayi bhavah prayah trayastrinshadhaha and prasiddha tatra dwadashaha. So we've talked about this because there's so many kinds of avyayas in declinables. So samiparthakaha krishnasya samipam upakrishnam etadrishtam asti. Abhavarthakaha makshikanam abhavah nirmakshikam. Yogyatarthakaha rupasya yogyam anurupam uttamam. Vipsarthakaha. So dinam dinam prati Pratidinam. So something as common as that we use is a samasta padam. Astu. Next, padarthan ativrityarthakaha. Shaktim anatikramya yatha shakti. Astu. And then you've got maryadarthakaha amuktehe amukti sansaraha. Next, abhividhyarthakaha abalebhyah becomes abalam haribhaktihi. Okay, has got that much of bhaktihi. Astu. Then Abhimukhyarthakaha agnim abhi in front of it becomes abhyagni. Matrarthakaha shakasya leshaha shaka prati. Avadharanarthakaha yavantaha shlokaha yavat shlokam. That becomes an avyaya padam at the end there. Astu yavat shlokam. Next, pare shabda yuktaha pare samudrasya pare samudram. Madhye shabda yuktaha madhye gangayaha madhye gangam. All avyayam at the end there. So ati nidram will become nidra samprati na yujyate iti. So ati nidram. It's not so straightforward there. And then you've got anuvishnum. What is anuvishnum? Vishnoho paschat arthe avyayi bhavah bhavati. So Vishnoho paschat. You can also have it in the sense of Vishnoho yogyam iti, where it will also become Anuvishnu, but you just have to be clear in which context you are using that particular compound word. Bhavataha manasi tasya sandarbhaha spashtaha avashyaka asti. Next, Shivasya yogyam Anushivam. For example, bhavitum arhati. Anujeshtham. Tasya kim bhavati? Jeshthasya anupurvena anupurvarthe. Atra bhavati avyayi samasah. Few other varieties that I am introducing you to here. Pratyagnihi. So prati, you see here they said that in the case of prati, it will have abhi, you had abhimukhyarthakaha. So prati, agni will become agnim prati. Abhimukhyarthe and then this is an avyai bhavah. Astu spashtamasti. So aluk samasah. अलुक् समासः अत्र किमस्ति? नायं पृथक् समासः. समासे कृते पूर्वोत्तरपदयोः विभक्तयोः लोपः भवति इति उक्तम्. We've talked a lot about the fact that the vibhaktis disappear and only the pratipadika form remains. क्वचित् पूर्वपदस्य विभक्तेः लोपः न भवति. In some cases the पूर्वपदस्य विभक्ति stays. Tada aluk samasa. Look disappears, aluk that which doesn't disappear. Iti vyavaharaha. Vane charaha doesn't become vanacharaha. It stays ayam upapada samasah asti. Next, janushandhaha. Ayam tritiya tatpurushaha samasah. Atmane padam. This is something that we are very familiar with. Kim bhavati atra? Chaturthi tatpurushaha. Parasmai padam samanam. Yudhishthira. Yudhisthiraha. One who is firm in battle becomes yudhishthiraha. कंठे कालः अयं व्यधिकरण बहुव्रीहि अस्ति. कंठे कालः यः सः इति भवति तत्र. देवानां प्रियः अयं षष्ठी तत्पुरुषः. संभाषणं पीयूषेण सह कुर्मः.
प्रणामः आर्ये.
नमस्ते पीयूष.
अद्य कं विषयम् अवलम्ब्य सम्भाषणं करिष्यावः आर्ये?
अद्य अहं त्वाम् एकां प्रहेलिकां प्रक्ष्यामि. एकं रिडल्.
अस्तु आर्ये, पृच्छतु.
कृष्णमुखी न मार्जारी, द्विजिह्वा न च सर्पिणी, पंचभर्त्री न द्रौपदी, यः जानाति सः पंडितः. एतस्य उत्तरं जानासि किम्? विद्यमानानां समस्तपदानां विग्रहं कृत्वा पश्य. यूयमपि पीयूषेण सह प्रयत्नं कुरुत इति आवेदनम् अस्ति.
अस्तु आर्ये, प्रयतिष्ये. अत्र कृष्णमुखी अस्ति. विग्रहः अस्ति कृष्णं मुखं. यस्याः सा कृष्णमुखी. लिखामि किम्? न तु मार्जारी. अपरः अस्ति द्विजिह्वा. द्वे जिह्वे. यस्याः सा.
पंचभर्त्री. तस्य किं भवति?
पंच भर्तारः. यस्याः सा.
कीदृशः बहुव्रीहि समासः अस्ति?
अत्र समानाधिकरणः बहुव्रीहि समासः अस्ति. यतः प्रथमपदं प्रथमायाम् अस्ति, द्वितीयपदमपि प्रथमायां तथा प्रथमाविभक्तौ अस्ति.
एवम्.
आम्. तर्हि यस्या सा. यतः कृष्णमुखी अस्ति तर्हि विशेष्यपदमस्ति स्त्रीलिङ्गे.
तर्हि किं भवितुं शक्नोति?
कृष्णमुखी, द्विजिह्वा, पंचभर्त्री. तर्हि सा तु लेखनी एव अस्ति.
उत्तमं. भवन्तः अपि प्राप्तवन्तः न वा? उत्तमम्. अस्तु, लिखसि तर्हि सर्वमत्र एकत्र. उत्तमम्.
आनन्दं जातम् आर्ये. प्रणामः.
तिष्ठतु तिष्ठतु. इतोपि एकं सम्भाषणम् अस्ति. एतत् सम्भाषणम् अस्माभिः अभिज्ञानशाकुन्तलम् अधिकृत्य लिखितम् अस्ति. किञ्चित् तत्र दीर्घमस्ति, किञ्चित् क्लिष्टमपि अस्ति. तर्हि अत्र निमन्त्रणम् अस्ति यत् भवन्तः कृपया स्वयम् अत्र पॉज़ बटन् स्थापयित्वा एकवारं पठन्तु. अनन्तरम् अस्मिन् पुटे तस्य आङ्ग्ल अनुवादः अस्ति and कुत्रचित् अस्माभिः समासः अपि दर्शितः अस्ति. तर्हि भवन्तः अवशिष्टभागे समासानाम् अर्थम् अवगन्तुं प्रयत्नं स्वयमेव कुर्वन्तु. So dear friends, here we have the Samastapadas that are given here with the conversation which is based on Abhijnana Shakuntala's dialogue between the Vidushaka and the king. And what we'd like you to do is to press the pause button here, go through this by yourself, find a partner, try and see if you can read it because it gets a little more complex, and then come over to this page and see whether you're able to connect the Samastapadas with the words that are given here. Astu, atra kinchit grihakaryamopi bhavati, किन्तु वयम् आशां कुर्मः यदि प्रश्नाः सन्ति अवश्यं तत्र फोरम मध्ये पृच्छन्तु अथवा यूट्यूब चैट मध्ये अपि पृच्छन्तु. वयं तस्य उत्तरं दातुं प्रयत्नं करिष्यामः. विल ट्राई एंड आंसर योर क्वेरीज देयर. अस्तु, तर्हि एतावद् उक्त्वा पीयूषः बहु धन्यवादः.
प्रणामः आर्ये.
धन्यवादः. तर्हि पुनरपि एतं श्लोकं मिलित्वा गायामः धर्मविषये. क्षमा सत्यं दमः शौचं दानमिन्द्रियसंयमः अहिंसा गुरुशुश्रूषा तीर्थानुसरणं दया आर्जवं लोभशून्यत्वं देवब्राह्मणपूजनम् अनभ्यसूया च तथा धर्मः सामान्य उच्यते इति। अस्तु तर्हि अत्र विद्यमानान् समासान् तु इदानीं कर्तुं शक्नुवन्ति एव इति विश्वासः अस्ति। इन्द्रियसंयमः इन्द्रियाणां संयमः, इन्द्रियस्य संयमः न भवति, कारणम् इन्द्रियाणां पञ्चानाम् इन्द्रियाणां संयमः इन्द्रियसंयमः इति भवति। तत्र कः समासः अस्ति? षष्ठी तत्पुरुषः समासः। उत्तमं। गुरुशुश्रूषा किं भविष्यति? गुरोः शुश्रूषा इति गुरुशुश्रूषा। उत्तमं। तत्र अहिंसा किं भविष्यति? नै तत्पुरुषः न हिंसा इति अहिंसा। उत्तमं। तर्हि अवगच्छन्ति इदानीं कथं पठितस्य उपयोगः साक्षात् भवति। So let's move on. As I mentioned in the concepts covered, we are going to be looking at the idea of yajna, because the yajna is another very important foundational concept of the Indic civilization. Tari, what does it say here? Yajnaha ijyate havirdiyate tra ijyate devata atra iti va. So yajna is translated often as sacrifice, but it also means an offering. And havihi, you have to give something, and it comes from the root yat, yad somewhere. So when we offer, you will get something. So the rishis, they recognize that all of creation is in this process of an exchange. At every moment of our lives, we are giving to something or the other, and we are receiving. So what they are saying, it is a giving to the devatas. Who are these devatas? They are those forces of light, because Vaidika Drishtyanusaram, according to the Vedic worldview, this world is made of conscious forces, and there are forces of light, the devatas, coming from the root div, and you've got dividing forces known as the dasyus and the vritras, the panis, etc. All of life is a kind of an exchange and an offering of the human energies to these energies, who in return give us their qualities and their energies. Tari ijyate havir diyate tatra ijyate devata atra iti va ityarthe yaj plus nang yajnyaha. अर्थः कः अस्ति? यज् प्लस् घञ् तत्र अभवति फाइनली, सः वदति यज्ञः. इदानीं यज्ञः नानाविधः, मेनी काइंड्स ऑफ यज्ञस्. So according to the Bhagavad Gita, the 4th chapter, द्रव्य यज्ञस्तपो यज्ञा, यज्ञाः विसर्गः तत्र गच्छति, योग यज्ञस्तथा परे, स्वाध्याय ज्ञान यज्ञाश्च यतयः शंसितव्रताः. Astu? Kim अस्ति अर्थः? The offering of the striver after perfection may be material and physical. So dravya yajnaha, like that consecrated in worship by the devotee to his deity, or it may be the austerity of self-discipline and the energy of his soul directed to some high aim, tapo yajnaha, or it may be some form of yoga like the pranayama of the Raja Yogins and Hatha Yogins. So yoga yajnaha tatha pare, or any other yoga yajna. Or it may be the offerings of reading and knowledge. So just imagine, everything is an act, and that act can be turned into an act of offering that invokes the higher forces. Just swadhyaya ataha is given a very important role, self-study and the reading of textures, because just that interaction with texts of a higher nature elevates our being. Agre pashyama. So what are the different qualities of yajnas? We have, according to the Bhagavad Gita in the 17th chapter, trividha asti tatra. सात्विकः राजसिकस्तामसिकश्च. अस्तु, सात्विकयज्ञः कः? अफलाकाङ्क्षिभिर्यज्ञः विधिदृष्टः य ईज्यते. अहं सन्धिविच्छेदेन करोमि. यष्टव्यम् एवेति एव इति मनः समाधाय स सात्विकः. So what is this? The sacrifice which is offered by men without desire for the personal fruit, which is executed according to the right principle, and with a mind concentrated on the idea of the thing to be done as a sacrifice. That is sattvic. Okay, so when there is no desire for personal fruit and there is a complete offering for the highest goal, tadanim sattvikam bhavati iti. Rajasika yajna kaha? Abhisandhaya tu phalam darbhartham api chaiva yat ijyate bharata shreshtha tam yajnyam vidhi rajasam. Kim asti rajasa yajnyaha? The sacrifice offered with a view to the personal fruit, abhisandhaya tu phalam, and also for ostentation with showy display of wealth designed to impress. Darbhartham api chaiva yat, cha eva yat. Also darbhartham api cha eva yat. Ijyate bharata shrestha, O best of Bharatas, tam yajñam vidhi rajasam. Know thou that to be of a rajasic nature. Tamasika yajñah kaha? Vidhihinam asrishtannam mantrahinam adakshinam Shraddha virahitam yajñam tamasam parichakshate. Kim kim asti tatra? Sacrifice. The sacrifice not performed according to the right rule of the Shastra. Vidhihinam, anantaram, without giving of food. Asrishtannam, without the mantra. Mantrahinam, without gifts. Adakshinam. Shraddha virahitam yajñam, empty of faith. Tamasam parichakshate. So any offering which is done with these spirits is known as the Tamasika Yajñam. Astu. Next, an understanding of the concept of the Pancha Mahayajñas. So I told you that life is perceived as a continuous exchange with various kinds of forces, various kinds of creations. And tari atra manusmriti vadati yajñah panchavidha yatha rishi yajñam deva yajñam bhuta yajñancha sarvada nr yajñam pitri yajñancha yatha shakti na hapayet. Kim vadati, one must not falter in performing the following offerings to the best of one's capacity. Kim kim asti? Offering to the sages, rishi yajñam, to the gods, deva yajñam, to nature, bhuta yajñam, to men, nr yajñah, and to the ancestors, pitri yajñah. Because there is this important exchange that is taking place. And then he says, Eta neke mahayajñan yajña shastra vido janaha anihamanaha satatam indriyeshveva juhvati. Some conversant with the ordinances relating to the sacrifices, yet indifferent to them, regularly offer these great sacrifices to the sense organs. So they are more into the pleasure-seeking offerings. Vachyeke juhvati pranam prane vacham cha sarvada vachi prane cha pashyanto yajya nirvritti makshayam. Some people constantly offer their life breath to speech and their speech into their life breath, knowing that in speech and in life breath rests the imperishable fulfillment of sacrifices. So what we say, how we breathe, how we are, who we are, all of that is so completely interwoven, and that's when you start paying more and more attention to what are the outputs of the individual into the larger offering of nature itself. Jnane naiva pare vipra yajantyetair makhai sada jnana moolam kriyamesham pashyanto jnana chakshusha. Other Brahmanas, looking with the eye of knowledge upon this act as having its root in knowledge, always sacrifice with these sacrifices by means of knowledge. Basically, the yajna is a call for conscious action, and a call, as the Vedas say, that all of life is essentially summarizable in two kinds of investments. Either we are investing in light or we are investing in darkness. Either we are investing in expansion, the brihat, the Brahman within us, or we are investing in contraction, our petty and the dasyus. They are fighting for the inner landscape of the human being. So, it's a choice, and therefore whom do we offer to, on whose side do we fight the battle is an important question. Shri Arvindaha tatra vadanti, symbolic sense of yajnaha, a symbolic system of external sacrifice in which every movement is carefully designed and coordinated to signify the subjective facts of the eternal yajna, aids the spiritual aspirant by molding his material sheath into harmony with his internal life and by mastering his external surroundings, so that there too the conditions and forces may be all favorable to his growth. The yajna has two parts, mantra and tantra, subjective and objective. In the outer sacrifice, the mantra is the Vedic hymn and the tantra the oblation. In the inner, the mantra is the meditation or the sacred formula. The tantra, the putting forth of the power generated by mantra to bring about some successful spiritual, intellectual, vital or mental activity of which the gods have their share. Astu, tari yajna, according to the Vedic symbolism, is not a one-time affair only. It is a call for a moment-to-moment awareness of where we are giving our energies and what we are receiving in return. Some references here. अस्तु तर्हि मित्राणि, तर्हि अद्य अधीतानां विषयाणां युष्माकं किञ्चित् विश्वासः वर्धितः स्यात् समासैः सह। तर्हि अभ्यासं कुर्वन्तु, सम्भाषणं कुर्वन्तु, तस्य प्रयोगं कृत्वा तेषां भिन्नभिन्नरूपाणाम् आनन्दं च अनुभवन्तु इत्येतावदुक्त्वा अत्र विरमामि। शुभं भवतु, पुनर्मिलामः।